Hey guys, welcome back to Personal Injury Perspective. I'm Chad Hastings. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to cover another horrendous tragedy, but this time justice may be served on the civil side. When a minor goes missing and an adult who is not her parent is closely involved, the question is always the same. Was there foul play? Why is she dead? How is she dead? In the case of David, the R&B star who had the decomposing body of Celeste Rivas Hernandez in his $100,000 Tesla Frunk parked near his house, this is exactly what everyone wants to know. People have asked me, Chad, could there be a civil case here? Following this awful death, is there a civil case? And my answer to that is absolutely. Let's talk about it. First of all, losing a child is every parent's worst nightmare. Parents don't ever want to watch their children lowered into the ground. My heartfelt prayers and condolences go out to the family of this 14-year-old girl. Let's start with the basics about this case. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was born on September 7, 2010. That's publicly available on her missing persons poster. She was just 14 years old when she died, or when she was found deceased. David, whose legal name is David Anthony Burke, he was born on March 28, 2005. At the time of these events, he is now 20 years old. The timeline of events is unfortunately tragic. Celeste was first reported missing in February of 2024. She was later found only to go missing again. The final time she was reported missing aligns closely with several public reports of her being in David's presence. There's videos, social media posts, and even a podcast appearance that confirm that she was with him on multiple occasions. A teacher publicly stated that they were together. TMZ and other outlets have interviewed friends, and these friends have reported seeing them together. That's David and Celeste. And Celeste was bragging to her friends and showing them pics about her celebrity boyfriend. She even had a matching SHH tattoo with David on their finger, which strongly suggests a private, secretive relationship. Importantly, Celeste was a minor. She had no driver's license, no car, no income, and really no independent means. So far, we don't know of any relatives or roommates that have come forward to say that she was living elsewhere with them during these periods of time where she ran away from home. Based on the statements we have so far, the only consistent adult presence that she had was with David. I'm not an internet sleuth, so perhaps many of you who are out there can add some to this picture. I just report on what's out there and what I've been able to find. But as of now, it's clear she had some sort of a relationship with David, and there's no relative or roommate taking care of Celeste that has come forward saying, hey, where is she? In every other murder case that I've covered, you always find stuff out there about the roommate or who is this? They understand that, there's a murder that occurred. Well, there's even a report recently with TMZ where David was spotted in her town. You can see that here. Also, TMZ reported that neighbors of Celeste spotted this black Tesla near or at Celeste's house in her city, which is different than Hollywood Hills, which is David's. There's so many interesting facts or perhaps rumors that I've seen reported when researching this case. Celeste's birthday, September 7th, which is particularly notable, it coincided with major releases of David, including the song named Celeste. She's 14 at the time. Reports suggest she had been missing for several months prior to her death, yet during that time, there are multiple photos and videos placing her with David, including a podcast, or it looks like a podcast, a public appearance here, and there's other social media images. This timeline forms the foundation for the legal analysis we're going to explore next. Now, we'll come back to this, so don't forget these facts. They are relevant to whether there's a civil case for the Rivas Hernandez family. Let's talk about the law. First, California Penal Code Section 273A, child endangerment. This statute imposes criminal liability on anyone who has care or custody of a child, willfully places that child in a situation that endangers their health or safety. California courts have interpreted care and custody fairly broadly. In People v. Perez, 2008, the court held that more than one person can simultaneously have care or custody of a child. The relevant question is whether the individual assumed responsibility for the child's care regardless of whether they were the primary caregiver. Similarly, in People v. Malfaven, a boyfriend who agreed to watch a child while the mother was briefly away was found to have care or custody under Section 273A. So what does this mean? Even if there is no criminal case filed, if Celeste was living with David or under David's supervision, he had a legal duty to protect her. After all, at all times relevant to the relationship, Celeste was a minor child and David was an adult. That duty may form or strengthen the basis for civil liability in a wrongful death or negligence claim. Think about the timeline, guys. This girl has no credit cards, she has no car, no driver's license, and was living somewhere for over a year. Unless she was living in the woods, off the land, or in some homeless camp, none of which any rumors or reports say that occurred in this case, she likely was with David. Think about it, guys. If Celeste had nowhere else to live, no adult caretakers came forward, and she was last seen with David, where else was she in this last year? If a civil jury looked at this timeline, could the combination of circumstantial evidence meet the preponderance of evidence standard? This is a great question and one that we're going to explore today a bit further. So as the date of this recording and this video, no criminal action has been filed against David. Also, I'm not aware of a civil case being brought against David at all. In fact, I found a GoFundMe page established by Celeste's family, or at least presumptively. You can see that here. As such, if they are out there trying to get donations, I'm guessing they probably don't have a personal injury attorney on the case yet. Maybe they do, but maybe they don't. It's hard to say. Who knows? I'm leaning on probably not, though. I say this because often when you hear about these high-profile cases dealing with celebrities, once their attorneys sign the case up, you start to hear about it. Look at Benjamin Crump is a good example. He's a famous lawyer. He has press releases and sometimes does press conferences for his civil lawsuits that are high-profile. Most recently, he covered the case, for example, of Kevin Rodriguez Zavala. That was a case that he covered recently. If Celeste's family hires a lawyer, there's a high likelihood the lawyer would set a press conference. I'm telling you, once a personal injury attorney gets on this case, I think it's very, very likely that you're going to hear about it, particularly if a civil lawsuit gets filed. A civil lawsuit is public record. So if that happens, the LA Times and every news source that's around that area, they're going to pick it up. Not to mention News Nation, TMZ, and other online sources that have been doing their internet sleuthing, they're all going to pick it up. So a civil lawsuit is very likely on this case, I believe. This is because the standard of proof in a civil case is beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's a very, very high standard. But in a civil case, the standard is preponderance of evidence. That means that you only have to prove more likely than not, or 50% plus one. So you can have doubts in a civil claim, and there will still be a case. Look at this case. Sure, you may have doubts, but based on the timeline, public photos, video, and eyewitness accounts, a civil attorney could argue that David assumed care, custody, and control of Celeste, and that he failed to meet the duty. After all, Celeste is dead. We don't know the cause of death, but the ultimate failure in taking care of a child is that child dying. This brings us to the discussion of, can a personal injury attorney bring a civil case while there is a pending criminal investigation, which is going on here right now? I've heard people say, Chad, no, you gotta wait till the criminal case is done. First of all, there's a 2-year statute of limitations in California, and the second answer to that question, wrong. The answer is yes, a civil case can be brought at the same time as a criminal investigation. In fact, I'm handling a case right now involving assault and battery, and the prosecution in the criminal case is cooperating with me. The civil case is pending in civil court, and the criminal case is now pending in the criminal court. But even before the criminal information was filed, I was talking to the prosecutor, and we traded information, we worked together. That was the way that it worked. The power of a civil suit can bring the family of Celeste incredible results. While David can refuse to answer questions based on his pleading of the Fifth Amendment, the court has the power to compel all electronic evidence, cell phone data, track logs, photos, emails, videos, social media postings, and so much more. Already, without getting into David's private phone, emails, or photos, we have a lot of information, and many of you are probably scratching your head saying, why wasn't this guy arrested yet? Well, that's for the criminal attorneys to discuss, but you can imagine if you bring the power of the court into play on a civil side, a good attorney conducting discovery could really find answers to who, what, when, how, where, and why. And all of these questions that we asked above may likely have answers, and a good attorney conducting discovery could get these answers readily through the power of subpoena. And California law allows a wrongful death action under its civil code. Under California law, specifically California Code of Civil Procedure, section 377.60, a wrongful death claim may be filed by individuals who are closely related to the deceased and suffered due to death. The statute outlines the following potential survivors: the surviving spouse or domestic partner, which is of course not applicable here; children; putative spouse, or that's someone believed or in good faith they were legally married to the decedent; stepchildren; parents or legal guardians if the decedent was a minor and the parents are deceased; or siblings. If no other heirs are available, the siblings can recover under this law. It's a pretty broad law. California actually has a good wrongful death law that's very encompassing. In the case of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, it is reported that she had both a mother and a father. I don't know the facts on that, but that's what's reported. Therefore, if true, at minimum, they would be the primary individuals eligible to file a wrongful death claim on Celeste's behalf. Of course, any civil case would face defenses. Let's talk about those. David's attorneys could argue that other adults and family members of Celeste were responsible for her whereabouts, i.e. her parents. They could also question the strength of the timeline that we talked about today, or suggest that the photos and videos do not establish care or custody. These defenses could sway a jury, but they do not eliminate the potential for civil liability entirely. Another argument you may see in a case like this is defending on the closeness or the strength of the relationship between Celeste and her parents. Already, there is video out there of an ex-boyfriend of Celeste who says here in this video that Celeste had problems with her parents and, her parents were mean. What problems? He doesn't really say. Certainly doesn't say they were abusive. I mean, my 13-year-old probably thinks I'm strict, but he's not running away. Whatever the case, in a civil case, the defense could probe into this relationship directly. The goal would be to establish that the parents did not care or had little to no emotional connection with their daughter, Celeste. After all, she ran away and was gone for over a year. They'd make those arguments. And I mentioned internet sleuths. If all the internet sleuths can find pictures and posts about Celeste being with David, what did the parents know? Did they know that she was at his home? I mean, this sort of defense could diminish the recovery of the estate if the evidence uncovered or supported lack of care, apathy, or any sort of an abusive relationship. But again, we don't know any of that yet. Another factor in civil cases is whether a judgment can actually be collected. This comes up a lot in these murder cases. Typically, where there's a murder suspect, that suspect usually does not have assets or money to collect. Unlike many criminal defendants, David is a celebrity with potentially significant assets, music royalties, and perhaps insurance coverage. Who knows? Look at his history. David has a studio album with a major record label, that's Interscope. Moreover, he has songs like Romantic Homicide, Here With Me, Placebo Effect, and Feel It. These are all very, very popular songs. I've personally not listened to them, but my 13-year-old, he says they're hits. He says that David has a big following. And some have argued that songs like Romantic Homicide is some sort of a foreshadowing of the mental state or plan that David had for Celeste. I read the lyrics. They're definitely pretty dark. But this being a motive seems like a stretch, but who knows? Could it be evidence in a case? Maybe. We'd have to see. Finally, this is a perfect segue for motive. While motive is not an element to proving either negligence or, in my understanding, required to prove murder, it certainly can support a jury's understanding of why a person would do something like commit a murder. And I want to be very clear here. There is no evidence or allegation that I have seen that there's a sexual relationship that occurred with David and Celeste. However, hypothetically, if it were discovered that such a relationship existed, California Penal Code Section 261.5, statutory rape, could apply. I mean, the age of consent in California is 18, and criminal penalties vary based on the age difference. But again, this is purely a hypothetical consideration, and and not an assertion of fact. All of those facts are probably going to be discovered by the criminal side or in the civil side. Some have argued that this would provide a motive for elimination of Celeste, but again, we don't currently have facts to support this as a motive, so it's really too early to make any real comment as to whether the motive is going to be part of the case. So where does this leave us? Based on the timeline, public reports, and California law, a civil case could definitely be pursued here, even if no criminal charges are ever filed. Or if a criminal case is unsuccessful. We see this all the time. O.J. Simpson was acquitted for the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson, but the personal injury attorneys filed a successful civil suit where they received a verdict for $33.5 million against O.J. Simpson. For all these reasons, I place this on the justice scale at a 6 out of 10. For now, there's enough for a civil attorney to investigate, potentially hold somebody, David, accountable, and pursue damages. David appears to be collectible. Unlike many criminal cases here, we have a defendant that most likely can pay a full judgment. If it can be established that David was either in care or custody of Celeste, or that any negligent action he took led to her death, he most likely could pay a full judgment, if not now, over time. If further facts come out that solidify any of what we discussed today, the justice scale rating on this case goes up and up and up. Rhetorical questions to leave you with thinking with, audience. Where did Celeste live while living away from home? Why did no other adult come forward, like a roommate, a family member, or a friend that she lived with? Nobody's come forward and said, hey, she's missing. And ultimately, if she had no other caretakers, is it more likely than not that an adult that she was last seen with bore a duty to protect her? These are the questions a civil court would examine, and the answers could have serious implications for or against David. This is a tragic case, guys. And the full story is still unfolding, but from a legal perspective, the framework for civil accountability at minimum would allow for a personal injury attorney to file a lawsuit in good faith, and whatever they find in the process is certainly worth understanding. This is without question a sad and ugly case. I look forward to finding out more, and I hope there is justice for Celeste. But what do you think? Do you think there's any civil liability against David based on what we've discussed? Let me know in the comments below. This has been Personal Injury Perspective. If you found this breakdown helpful, follow along as we continue to look at whether victims in high-profile cases like this one can truly obtain justice. Be safe out there, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. I will see you on the next episode of Personal Injury Perspective.